We've got a lot to get to. Let's just dive right in. Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump are essentially tied in every Sun Belt swing state. That's according to brand new Fox News polling. And it shows that Harris leads Trump by 1 point among registered voters in Arizona and by 2 points in both Georgia and Nevada. Trump, meanwhile, leads by a single point in North Carolina. Now, all of those results are within the margin of error, but the trend lines favor Harris. In previous Fox polls conducted before President Joe Biden exited the 2024 race about 6 weeks ago, Trump led by 5 points in Arizona, Nevada, and North Carolina, and by 6 points in Georgia. And Elise, we can hold up the graphic there on screen there for a moment more. You can see the trend here. And yes, the race is close, but when President Biden dropped out, it reshaped the race. Not only does Harris have momentum, but suddenly her paths to 270 electoral college votes have really opened up.
Well, and then you also look at the impact on the down ballot races. And I was just frankly shocked by the Arizona Senate poll within this poll and how Ruben Gallego is just running away beyond the margin of error with the Arizona Senate race. And yes, it's Carrie Lake he's up against. She's a drag on the ticket in Arizona for sure.
But it's like 15 points.
It's a big lead in a place where it wasn't supposed to be that huge. So she definitely has momentum. Is she going to be able to maintain the enthusiasm, the excitement going into September post-debate? That's what remains to be seen, how the next 2 months are going to play out and whether this is a honeymoon or it's for real.
And Harris and Walz will have their first sit-down interview later tonight. Sam Stein, let's get you in on these polls here. I mean, it's significant. You know, the polls are a snapshot. We know that. But this shows where this race is at this moment, and the wind is at Harris's back. What do you think about the state of play in those Sunbelt states? States that just a few weeks ago, Donald Trump had thought he had put away. Remember, at the sidelines of the Republican National Convention, I know you were there in Milwaukee, Trump aides telling reporters, we don't even have to advertise or campaign in North Carolina. Right. That state is in the bag. Now, his lead's 1 point.
Well, I'll never get over that dig you made about me getting through security. That was taking me for my entire life, frankly.
Pass it on to your kids.
They'll remember it too. They're watching, I'm sure. I think to your point, look, we all know that the race has been reset, but the way in which it's reset, I think, matters here. And by that, I mean, when you have 3 states that are critical to the election, it narrows the field for Trump. It allows him to just focus on those battleground states in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. When you have 7 states now in contention, it becomes a resource battle. Much more so. And in this case, it's not just that Harris has the momentum, it's that she's raising tons of more money. When you're raising $500 million in a month, right, you can then afford to do ad blitzes and fund on-the-ground operations in more of these states. You can do turnout and persuasion in more of these states. And now you're stretching Trump's resources even further. And so, yes, there's more maps. But in addition to, more pathway to 270. But in addition to the pathways to 270, you also benefit from the fact that you have a lot more money and can afford to play in all those states. And Trump now has to be on the defensive. I mean, not only do they not want to spend in Arizona and Georgia, they don't want to spend in North Carolina. And they're going to have to do that now. Doesn't mean Harris is going to win those states, but it does make it more likely for her to pick off enough states to get to 270 now.
Yeah, and then Harris, of course, spending time in Georgia on a bus tour and then a rally right now. So here's how Fox News chief political anchor Bret Baier reacted to his own network's polling yesterday, with a close eye, indeed, on one of those key swing states.
Georgia remains. It was the closest contest in 2020, decided by less than 1/4 of a percentage point in favor of President Biden. Our recent polling showed the widest gap, 6 points, for former President Trump over President Biden. But now that has closed. Harris has a 2-point lead in our latest poll. It's expected to be a close race. That's obviously within the margin of error. But both candidates are spending a lot of time in Georgia, and if that lead holds, she wins Georgia, she wins the presidency of the United States.
The importance of Georgia on display right now. The Trump-Vance campaign, as you might imagine, quickly issued a memo calling the polling atrocious, saying, we report, you decide. Fox's polling has an awful track record. And speaking of Georgia, Vice President Kamala Harris and Governor Tim Walz are on a campaign bus tour of southern, typically redder counties in that state. The Democratic ticket was greeted yesterday on an airport tarmac by students from Savannah State University, Georgia's oldest HBCU. The tour then kicked off with a series of stops focused on education. Harris and Walz then traveled south to Hinesville, Georgia, where they visited a local high school and spoke to members of the faculty and the student marching band.
You kind of embody this idea, and the Vice President talks a lot about it. Each of our individual talents, what we can contribute, but something bigger than ourselves when you get together. Your single instrument alone is an amazing thing, but as part of this band, it becomes really amazing. I'm just grateful that you'd have us here. I'm grateful to be part of a team with a really great head coach here in your next President of the United States, Kamala Harris.
Sometimes you hit the note, sometimes you don't, right? But all that practice makes for beautiful music. And that is a metaphor, that is symbolic for everything that you all will do in your lives. Which is you're going to show what a winning team looks like. You're going to show what it means to put yourself out on the field, to put yourself in front of people, to have the confidence to do it. Sometimes you're going to hit the step right. Sometimes you're not. Sometimes you're going to win the game. Sometimes you may not. But you know, you never let any circumstance knock you down or slow you down. You just keep going at it.
Harris aides have long said she loves a bus tour, and the Vice President will continue her tour of Georgia today, while Walz will head on to campaign events in North Carolina. Harris will end the tour with a rally in Savannah later on today, and the importance of Georgia also on display by Donald Trump's efforts to patch things up with Republican Governor Brian Kemp, popular governor with whom Trump has been feuding for years. Joining us now, editor-at-large at The 19th, Erin Haynes. She's also an MSNBC political contributor and an expert on all things Georgia. So, Erin, tell us about the state of play there and what we're seeing from this push by Harris and her running mate to move into sort of these redder counties. And it's not about winning those counties, right? It's about closing the margin of defeat, but closing the gap so therefore you can win it in Atlanta, in the suburbs of Atlanta. And she's speaking to voters, white and black, who don't always think about voting for Democrats.
Right, and who also don't always get to see a Democrat, especially in that part of the state. Listen, there are 159 counties in Georgia, and Atlanta is only in one of them. Typically, Democrats do tend to focus in and around Atlanta and those surrounding counties, and Republicans are the ones that tend to go to the rest of the state. Republicans avoid Atlanta. Democrats kind of avoid the rest of the state. But Harris is showing that she is willing to work for those votes, like you said, not necessarily to win those red counties, but certainly to kind of eat away at the margins. Remember, that's the kind of map that Stacey Abrams and other grassroots groups like Black Voters Matter and others really, worked to build the coalition that elected Senator Raphael Warnock and Senator Jon Ossoff in 2020, and obviously President Joe Biden and Kamala Harris turning Georgia blue in that year, something that Vice President Harris is obviously hoping to repeat. Listen, I mean, you have people in that part of the state that are concerned about affordability, about opportunity, and so to hear, Coach Walz and Vice President Harris really down there trying to rally them, bringing some of that joy also in the form of encouragement to an area that they know, a lot of people are still struggling, kind of trying to strike that balance, I think was something really important in a part of the country that shows kind of where they are coming out of this convention, focused on the middle class and focused on opportunity for folks like the people in the Savannah area these 2 days.
Erin, it's Ali Vitale. I'm glad that you're with us because we started our 5 a.m. hour with our friend and a colleague of yours, Jen Gerson, talking about the messaging around freedom to try to appeal to some moderate white women that might not typically vote Democrat. Can you talk about the impact of that kind of a message around freedom, around protecting democracy, around reproductive health care that could transcend racial lines among women voters who are going to be so crucial in this election, not just in Georgia, but in battleground states across the country?
Such a great point, and thank you so much for highlighting Jen's story, because white women are the largest voting bloc in the country. I think a lot of people don't necessarily realize that. And so a message that appeals to them, particularly in a year where we already knew at the 19th that abortion was going to be on the ballot. Harris has been the Democrats' strongest surrogate on the issue of abortion, tying it to freedom and rights and really just this question of what makes a healthy democracy. That's something that could resonate with a lot of these conservative suburban white women who live in counties that are outside of Atlanta. And so that, could be part of the winning formula that puts Georgia in play. Another thing that I would also note, Republican Governor Brian Kemp is somebody who is very popular with conservative suburban white women. And so I think that probably also has a lot to do with why former President Trump decided that he wanted to make up with Governor Kemp at this time, because the way that he's been speaking about Governor Kemp is something that definitely rubbed a lot of those conservative Georgia women the wrong way.